I'm Sarah and this is Duck River Homestead, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the garden and what we're learning. When I started planning for the garden, I wanted it to be really simple because I'm new to gardening. Every plant that I've ever had in our home as like an indoor plant I've killed or I've hated because they were like, it just attracted bugs. So it's pretty comical that I'm gardening. But over the last year I felt just some conviction and just like an urge and a pressing to learn this skill. And so when we were planning the garden, initially I'd really wanted it to be simple, and I kept it to just 12 things that we knew that we ate regularly. I'd wanted to do more herbs because I hate getting those like $2 or $3 packets at the store and then they spoil before I've even used all of them. So mostly herbs and vegetables. My hope was as I got success there, then over the years I could expand more into, okay, now that we have all of our vegetables off of the grocery list and we're doing them at home, then I could move on to fruit and other things. Initially I had started with just 12, and what to me was, it's funny though, because some of my friends, I'm saying this is a small garden, but some of my friends feel like this is a big garden, so it's all relative. I was starting smaller than what Brian and I knew would be necessary to do fully all the vegetables that our whole family would need for a whole year, because I didn't want to start there. That felt too overwhelming. I needed to feel some success before getting that big. I also started with mostly transplants from a local garden store. It felt too overwhelming to me to start from seed my very first time. I had heard there's a big learning curve with that, and I was trying to give myself the best opportunity for success because my temperament is kind of, I get discouraged really easily. And one thing that I'm learning though is that, and that has brought me encouragement, is that even the gardeners that have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years or their whole life, every year there's going to be crops that work and crops that don't. And so that really just kind of helped me step in and know not only is that going to happen in my first year just because I'm new, it's always going to happen. That's just sort of the lifestyle of gardening. And so that's just kind of helped me keep going, knowing that the mistakes I'm going to make or the things that I'm going to learn or the crops that are going to fail, it's not just because I'm new, it's just because that's the nature of gardening. I've also been hesitant to share our garden because it just feels really vulnerable to show here's what I'm doing and here are the mistakes that I'm making, and or even maybe I don't realize I'm making a mistake yet and someone's watching who's done it before and they know. But I feel like it's important just to get rid of that pride, and I've learned so much from people who have been willing. Just in the last week, there are 3 people that I follow on YouTube who have shared kind of what they're navigating this year. One of them was the seasonal homestead and how she's navigating some beetles that were coming and just ruining some of her potatoes and peppers, and how she navigated that. Watching Jess at Roots and Refuge, she's been a great teacher for me, and how she's navigating a high tunnel that had contaminated compost. And I mean, she's lost like 90% of what she planted in that one high tunnel, but just seeing how she's navigating that and pivoting that, so much of homesteading lifestyle is pivoting, and that is hard for me. Part of my walk with Christ has been learning how to pivot well and in a way that is, humble and resilient and not agitated and frustrated. Having kids, parenting, homeschooling, that has really been some tools that he's used to help me build that muscle. And I feel like this is just another place that he's giving me that opportunity with gardening. And so seeing Roots and Refuge pivot, the seasonal homestead pivot, Jess from 3 Rivers Homestead, and I'm in the middle of watching her most current one, but she has a large family, and with season of life and things that happen, there was a whole week that she couldn't get in her garden, and just real life and how that happens. And so if other people are willing to do that and it brings me hope, I feel like I just need to let that pride go and share, here's what we're doing, here's what we're learning, because I know there's other people that are curious and wanting but feel ill-equipped or not qualified or hesitant. And so because others have shared that with me, I'm realizing that, oh, that does qualify me. The fact that I feel unqualified qualifies me. The fact that I feel ill-equipped, perfect starting point. And I've heard that from newbies, and I've heard that from seasoned gardeners who have their own CSA and who are flourishing. So I just got to get over myself and share with you guys what we're doing and what we're learning. Okay, so I had done 4 different types of tomatoes because I didn't want to do 20 of the same kind. I kind of wanted to do a few different types. I chose to do indeterminate rather than determinate tomatoes. Indeterminate meaning that there's no limit to the number number of like fruit that it will produce. There's a determined amount. So I just happened to pick mostly indeterminate or all indeterminate. I wasn't that interested in the bush or determinate tomato types. So I did 4 different types, and so far nothing has taken them. But one of the things that we did was we put down this like landscaping fabric. Well, I've liked that for as far as weed suppression. I feel like that's been great to start, because we would have wanted to start, if we had known this was where we were going to do the garden, we would have over winter put down cardboard and gotten this area ready and the soil ready so that when we planted in the spring, it would have had really good, rich, ample soil. But we didn't know that we were doing this until a few weeks before we planted, so we did the fabric. So we put that down, and I feel like, well, I think it was a good choice because I don't live here yet, and so I'm only able to come to the garden maybe once or twice a week. So it's been great for weed suppression. However, I don't know that I want to do that for when we expand the garden, because it is inhibiting me from putting more, it just feels like more work to have to cut out the fabric, dig the hole, put the transplant in there. And sowing directly in the soil is annoying with this, because to put the seed directly in, it just feels like more work. Also, again, we want to be encouraging good soil, because when you have good soil, you have good plants. The fabric doesn't really do that. So that's another reason why moving forward, we will be starting it different. I've used an app that I do love. I'm not ready to part with it. I love it because it's been helping me know like plants that work well together, spacing, all of that. However, when I'm laying it out on the app, it feels so different when I'm walking in the garden. So when I walk through, I see all these like holes and gaps. So like when I look down here, like I have tomatoes going along here, and then I have basil and lavender and calendula and dill. That's a whole other problem I'm having. But here's parsley that is just poop. Either something took it or it pooped out because it's just so hot. But I just feel like I could be using this space so much more and so much better. We had done mulch for the walkways, and we're gonna do that again when we expand. So we're gonna go this way, but I'm still unsure how much to expand, because I know I need to create more room for some of the fall stuff because we have such a long warm season, and I can still be getting tomatoes and cucumbers all the way into October. Is our first frost date is in October, late October. And so because I'm still going to be using so much of this, I'm not going to be able to put all of the fall stuff in here. So I think we're going to go out a little bit. But I'm just hesitant on like how much, because I feel like there's more space I could be using in the current one. But I also am not looking forward to cutting into the fabric more. So I really want the other method. So I'm navigating that. The other reason why I know we want to expand is the girls want to have their own plot and their own space to do their own thing, which I want to encourage. But I'm also struggling to figure out how much do I need, not just for our family, but if the girl, so for example, kale. We don't eat a lot of kale, but I would like to learn how to grow it, and that would be an easy thing for us to stop getting at the store. But if both girls want to plant kale, I don't need them growing kale and me growing kale. Here are carrots. They're actually doing surprisingly well, considering I learned that carrots really don't like the heat and they're not great in the south for summer. We might get some of these, but I'm gonna be doing a few different varieties for fall. Another thing that I'm doing different is I initially thought that I wanted to go through my first spring, summer, and fall season, doing them all from transplants from like a garden center. And while I did do that initially, I feel like cost-wise, it's not the route I wanna go, and I also have a lot more options variety-wise if I start from seed. So our fall garden, I'm starting from seed, so earlier than I thought I was going to. I was gonna wait till next spring. So that changed. I'm learning that earlier than I thought. I did that this week with the girls. I went to a friend's house. My friend Tanya, she's been gardening for years. She was so kind to just let me come over and show me what she does and let me do it with her. So she showed me how she had her trays, and then I just did my trays, and it was just so helpful for me to do it with somebody. And so we did that together, and I did another tray with the girls the next day, which I feel like was helpful for me to make sure that I retain this information and also include the girls, because when we were at Tanya's house, my kids were playing with her kids and they had no interest in learning. Surprisingly, a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old can put teeny tiny seeds in the soil pretty well. I thought we were gonna lose a lot, but they did great. We have that right now indoors at the house. And one thing that I was encouraged to hear that Tanya had told me was that she actually thinks growing from seed for the fall is easier to do than when you're growing from seed in the spring. Because when you're doing it in the springtime, you're dealing with like colder, darker days, and so you usually need a grow light. And there's just more, whereas when you're starting from seed in the fall, all I really need is to keep them inside, because it's too hot right now for them to be outside. Keep them inside by a sunny window. So that seems easier to me. So I'm so glad that I unknowingly chose fall to be the season that I start from seed. Another thing I'm trying to figure out is how much do I need, which I feel like that's just what the first year looks like. I don't know if that's the first year in general or if it's just the first year for every crop. We'll see. That's another reason why I'm not really sure how much further out we need to go this way, because, for example, broccoli, we eat lots of broccoli. So I tried to figure out how much do we approximately eat every week. Some weeks we have more, some weeks we have less. Then it turned out, okay, for a family of 4, each person is supposed to have like 3 to 5 broccoli plants. But when I lay that, I'm like, I really don't think we need that much. And then if my kids want to plant some broccoli, I don't need to be doing 15 to 20 plants if they're doing 2 or 3 each of them. So all the math, it's just weird. And I'm just kind of planting seeds and hoping that we figure it out and it all works out. I'm also trying to add a couple for margin for if something happens and I lose a couple, so that I have a couple started already. And then I'd also love to have some extra just for like gardening friends who I'm like, hey, would you like some broccoli? Do you want some lettuce? We're doing a few different lettuces. I'm also doing more basil, so there are some things that I'm planting in ground right now. I only did 2 basil plants initially. Honestly, 3 months ago, I was like, why in the world do gardeners plant so much basil? So these are the only 2 I did. I just did like a sweet basil, and then this, it's a pesto basil. But I'm finding we really like basil. I'm planting more basil because I also saw last week on Roots and Refuge, you can make basil tea. And I only had 2 plants to experiment with, and they did taste different than each other, and we liked them both. So I really would love to have like a purple basil and a citrus basil and a lemon basil to try those flavors. So also I want to make homemade pesto because I just prefer to not have all the extra additives that in the jars at the store, and I kind of want to experiment to find what our favorite is. I need more basil because for each recipe you need like 1 to 2 cups of basil. So I need more to harvest. I think we're just kind of navigating right now. How do we want to expand? Can I be using more space? I know I can. How do I want to be maximizing the space more in the garden we currently have? How much do we want to be expanding and probably changing the method that we're using with the soil when we initially get it ready, and then navigating where the kids are gonna have their spot. I would also like to have enough room to just sit and be in my garden, like have like a table and chairs, especially since I'm hoping that we're gonna be moving here in the next month or so. I would love to just come out here and spend the mornings sitting with coffee and tea and reading my Bible. So I would love to squeeze that in, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to this fall, but hopefully by next spring. All right, so that's what we're learning in our garden and what we're assessing and what we're just kind of pivoting, navigating as we go. I hope that I'll be able to harvest some tomatoes, do some canning for some tomato sauce. We have already started canning and preserving some jellies, jams, preserves, pickles, carrots, all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for joining us in the journey, for following along, for being supportive, and just encouraging us as we step out in faith and do something that I know Brian has wanted to do for a very long time, but I've just recently gotten the courage and the conviction to go where the Lord's following. So we'll continue to share as we go. Have a great day.